In the Haftarah and Parshas Vayeshev, it brings from the Psukim in Amos, Al Shloisha Pisha Yisrael ve'arba lo ashivenu, lo imachram bekesef tzadik ve'evyon be'avur na'alayim. Over here it refers to the fact, as the Radak explains, that the Kodesh Baruch Hu's mochel, even on the Gimel Chamoros, even from the three of the most severe sins, as killing, arayot, and avodah zarah. However, when it comes to gezel and chemes, when it comes to kidnapping and stealing and taking and abusing other people, over there, Kodesh Baruch Hu is not mochel. Apparently, the idea is that he's not mochel until the other side is mochel, and it's brought in the Yalkut Shimoni that this is a remiss to Mechirat Yosef. That's why it's brought in this week's parsha. Over here, it's referring to the stealing that was done, the kidnapping that was done with Yosef, and as the piyut brings down. By Bnei Ashkenaz, they read from the piyut on the Musaf on Yom Kippur, that it says that Yosef HaTzadik was sold for a pair of shoes. And that's why it makes a reference in the Pasuk, Ve'evyon avur na'alayim, that he's being sold because of the na'alayim. And as a result of this, says the piyut over there, that the Asara Aruge Malchus, the 10 tzaddikim, the 10 big tzaddikim, amongst them Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Chaim and Tradian and others that were killed in a very gruesome way, were a kapara, were a gilgul of these 10 shvatim. When the 10 shvatim sold Joseph, they required a kapara, and it came through a gilgul, through a reincarnation that happened through the Asar Ruge Malchus that happened afterwards. This is the words of the Zohar. It's brought in the Shlah, and like I said, it's based on this Yalkut Shimoni. Says the Rabbeinu Mechai in our parsha in Perek Lamed Chet. It's kedai to see it over there. He says, Al derech HaKabbalah, the reason why the whole episode with Yehuda is brought in our parsha is because it was somech Gilgul Gilgul. Just like the idea of doing Yibum, the Levirate marriage, has to do with Gilgulim, because by going ahead and getting married to his brother's sister, or in this case Yehuda getting married to his daughter-in-law for his son, so then that is a kiyum, that is an inauguration of Yibum, and he is coming and replacing Kebiyochel, his brother, and the child will be there as a resurrection, bringing out a Gilgul of his brother. That's what the Ramban writes in our parsha. That's the meaning behind the idea of Yibum. Ad Kedei Kach, the Gemara as a havamina, as a way to understand that maybe you should even be named after the child. The child should be named after the brother, Kilu. But anyways, that's the idea of that Gilgul. And it says that also we have a different Gilgul, which is the Gilgul of the Asara Haruge Malchus, the 10 martyrs that were killed later because of the sale, the treacherous sale that occurred over here. And therefore we have 2 episodes of Gilgul going on in our parsha as the Rabbeinu Bechaya puts them together. Interestingly enough, Lamaisa, in the end of the day, it was 9 brothers. We know Reuven was not there, and obviously Binyamin was not there. Scary, but the Rabbeinu Bechai gives one of the terutzim. Over there, he says, who was the 10th person? Yosef HaTzadik himself. Because Yosef was a catalyst for this whole episode, for this mess that the brothers got into. And yes, because he did things maybe a little bit overboard, and he went out of perspective, it led them to be jealous of him and led to this unfortunate episode that we are all so familiar with, making him the 10th martyr. Unbelievable, a big chiddush. And this idea of the 10 martyrs is not some wild midrash or zohar. It's mentioned in a lot of places. Lamashal, in the Targum Yonatan, it brings the 10 shvatim or nidgalgun in Asara Ruge Malchus, just like the Rabbeinu Bechaye, and it brings, that's what it says in the pasuk, Vayivech Aleim Yosef. Yosef cried on them. What does it mean he cried? Why did he cry? Aleim, he says, Al, Aleph Lamed is Al, Yud in Alehem is Yud Keneged the 10. Hem, Asara, Hem, Haruge Malchus. Hey, Mem is Haruge Malchus. Al, Yud, Al 10, Haruge Malchus. The Haruge Malchus. The abbreviation of the word Alehem is for that. Vayivka, and Yosef cried because he knew that the 10 Haruge Malchus is going to come as a result of this Parsha's event. The Kli Yakar says that Ad Kedei Kach, Yosef seemed to know, because he said to them, Ve'ata al titzabu. Ata is from Moshe. Now, don't be sad. Ata with an ayin. Now, don't be sad. It'll be okay. But Ata says, Kli Yakar, now don't be sad. In the future, it's going to be sad. In the future, something's going to happen. He's obviously referring to those Asara Aruge Malchut. So here we have the concept of Gilgulim, which is brought repetitively in our parsha, and this is a real idea which exists. Now, there was once upon a time a machloket amongst the Rishonim, if this thing really is something of a phenomenon. The Chida in Hashem Gilgulim does bring different opinions. He says the Rimigash and the Rima Kadano had a big machlokes about it. The Maisa of the Sefer Ikrim, and people in the camp of the Rambam a little bit more are of the opinion that it does not exist. But as we all understand, the accepted opinion is like the Arizal, which is brought in the Rav Chaim Vital, the Zohar, the Reshit Chochmah, the Vilna Gaon, the Chida, and others that all say that for sure there's a concept of Gilgulim. And we've had many scenarios. Ad Kedei Kach, the Chida brings a story from Rav Yehuda Aryeh Mimodina that did not believe in Gilgul. He was one of the strong disbelievers of the idea of Gilgulim, of reincarnations. And he was a Rav in a city, and there was a child that was born, and when he became a month old, he became very treacherously sick, very difficult sick. When he was already reaching 6 months, they realized it's all over, he's not going to make it another day. They called the Rav to be able to say some psukim with the baby in order to say a little bit different Torah. They said apparently that was the minhag in Italy over there. And they asked his Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Mimodina if he could go ahead and do that. He came over, he said some psukim, he saw the baby open his eyes, say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, close his eyes, and Yatza Nishmasoi. And his neshama went away with the words of Echad. Said the Rav Mimodina, and this is what the difference is between a Rav and a Kofir and a heretic. He said, from here, I changed my opinion. I was wrong. I see there is a meaning of Gilgulim. This was obviously with a Tikkun. The 6 months had to fix up something in a previous Gilgul, and that's why he had the capabilities to do that. And that's how it is, as the Reshit Chochmah writes. Yes, Rav Haigon didn't believe in it, and we know the Arizal, of course, did, and the Ramban, because they were Nichlas B'tocha Sod, the Ramban, who of course learned Sod and knew all about it, so that's why he has it. And the biggest one who brought it to the forefront, of course, obviously after the Arizal, is the Goyen. In Evan Shlomo and Peri Gimel, he brings very strongly, and this is going to be a couple of things we can learn from here, about the fact that Gilgulim existed, always is existed, and it's the idea of Tzadik V'Aloi, because a Rosh is a taker, he's one who swallows up, he's a vacuum. And his kapara in his next Gilgul is that, yes, he is lacking, he's an ani, he probably doesn't have much, or he's a beggar, or he needs, or he doesn't have much to do. And even if he's a tzaddik in the next Gilgul, that's the Yisod, he says, of Tzadik V'Aloi. That's why it happens. That's what it means in the Gemara, in Mod Katan, Chavchet, when it says, B'nei Chayu Mazonim, that the idea of children and a person's how much food or mazonot they're going to have depends on his mazel. What does it mean? His mazel is good luck. Mazel means his Gilgul. Depends how he's going to be born, and what mazel is going to be born, his horoscope, kibiyachol, where is going to be connected, and that comes from this idea because most of a person's lot, kibiyachol, is based on his Gilgul, his previous resurrection. Of course, a person has free choice to decide where he's going to take it, for the good or the bad. But that's how he explains this, Alpi, the Sefer in Yonah. And that's the idea of the Gilgul. Ad Kedei Kach the Mishabur Yishon, and Shari Tzion brings it also. He says that's why we read Sefer Yonah on Yom Kippur, because it's coming to teach us that a person can't run away from his tafkin, and Yonah came in order, he's going to come back as a Gilgul afterwards, and he would come back as a Gilgul afterwards, and therefore we read Yonah to remind us of the power of Gilgulim, because if you don't do it in this world, it's going to happen in Chiput HaKever, Gilgulim, pain in the next world, so take care of what you need to do now, and that is obviously the message of Yom Kippur. Ad Kedei Kach that there was a Maisa, there was actually a occurrence that happened in the time of the Vilna Gaon with one of his Talmidim, with one of his students, that he had one child after a long wait. He had one child, and the child got sick, and he became very sick and ill, and he passed away at a very young age, approximately close to 10 or something, 9 or 10 years old. The Goyen, who came to be Menachem Avol, he came to Menachem Avol to his Talmud. Wow, this incredible visitor. But when the Goyen comes, he could say whatever he wants. I don't recommend saying this when you go Menachem Avol to someone. But he told him, I know that your son was a Gilgul, a Tikkun for the Ger Tzedek, the famous Duke of Petachev, that was the famous Ger, that he died, Al Kiddush Hashem. He was willing to give up his life in order, even though he would have been one of the next kings, one of the big dukes. He was a very high position. He was a cardinal in Christianity, and he went ahead and became Jewish when he realized the facade behind the whole religion, and he ended up getting burnt to the stake. Said the Goyen, a big chidush. But the first 10 years of his life, He was born to a non-Jewish mother. He was suckled by a non-Jewish mother, and he lived a non-Jewish life for a certain amount of years, and required a Gilgul for those years. And your son was it. He's the one who fixed the final tikkun for the Ger Tzedek, which the Vilna Gaon is buried next to him, by the way, on purpose, because he said you made a final connection. So we see that the Vilna Gaon was very strong about this, and he, only the Ari of the Vilna Gaon could probably know who was what Gilgul, but Al Kopanim, we see that this is a real phenomenon. What can we learn from here? And especially, what nafkamina does it make for me? What difference does it make for me? Okay, Gilgul, Nilgul, how does this do? And we know we always try to make out something practical, but the answer is the Vilna Gaon himself answers the question in Yonah. In Perek Daled, Pasuk Gimel. Okay, let's Otiyot Dag, right? Yonah is the Dag, the fish. It's also Otiyot David Genish. But anyways, so in Perek Daled over there says the Vilna Gaon that the same Avera that a person has a cheshek, a drive, a ratzon for, when you have an overpowering interest to do some type of Avera, you should know you're coming from your previous Gilgul. Why? Because we spoke about this in the Life After Death Shur, that in the afterlife, even if a person goes to Gehenna, it doesn't change him per se. It doesn't change his individual drives, unless he perfects himself. So therefore, even when he comes back, after the next world, he comes back as a Gilgul, those drives are still instilled in him. And his tikkun, his kapara, his avodat Hashem, what he needs to be doing in order to get a proper atonement, is to go ahead and take those drives and break them. Don't look. Don't push that button. Don't speak to that person that you shouldn't be speaking to. Don't say that lashon hara. Don't always get angry when you think that you get angry on every tip of every little thing that happens, every occurrence that happens. Control yourself. Try to have a little bit more patience. Try to be able to learn a little bit more. Maybe that cheshek to battle and always miss and not doing what the right thing is. Are you missing your tefillot? All these drives, it comes from laziness, or it comes from a certain place of a bad meter. You should know that's a pirush from your previous Gilgul. And we're all Gilgulim these days. It's obviously there, and it's a big push, you should know. This is a big driving force to understand that what I'm doing right now is a kapara for really what needs to be done. I'm actually doing my tachlit hachalei, as we know the Mesilat Yesharim says, Yisodot to know Adam Ashtado Chovato Be'olamo. Everybody has their individual chov. It doesn't say to remember Torah Yag Mitzvah, remember 613. No. Everybody has their individual chov, their obligation, because they have their own individual drives, and a person has to go ahead and work at it. As the Shevet Musa writes in Perek Aleph, Sif Yud Gimel, same thing on the different side, other side of the coin, a similar idea. He says, you know what your Gilgul is? He says, where a person has a cheshek for that point of doing a positive. Before I was talking about the negative, what to watch out for. Now what to do is where your cheshek is. If a person has whatever that cheshek is in that piece of Torah, that's what you should be doing. Because if not, you're going to be ending up karacham mikan mikan. If a person likes Gemara, if he likes Chumash, if he likes being able to do, if a person's into Kiruv, if a person's into doing Musar, if a person's into helping others, doing Chesed, etc., etc. Everybody has their own individual take in their spiritual realm, your personal interest. That drive is coming again for that, what you're missing. The Alshich came to the Arizal once and he told him, can you teach me Kabbalah? Now the Alshich was the biggest darshan. He was the darshan in the Arizal Shul himself. He was known for a famous drushim. We have his farm. And he was the darshan over there in Drush. And he came to the Arizal and said, but now I want to learn Kabbalah. And the Arizal said, B'shum parin v'oifam, I'm not teaching you any Kabbalah. He said, I don't want you to do it. He said, Dalecha, she'al zebata, you came to be a darshan, that's your koach, and that's you're coming to make a kapara on, and that's why you're so good at it. Hashem gave you this koach because this is what needs to be filled up. He says, and you should do ikar, yulimudecha ba, that's what you should be learning on. Because if not, he says, you're going to end up being karacham mikan mikal. He says, the Yetzer Hara comes and tells you to do things that you don't want, that you shouldn't be doing, or it's not for you, or it's far from you. If you end up doing the opposite of what you're supposed to be doing, again, only the Ari and the Vilna Gaon could say such strong words. We're not like that, but at least we see this concept that a person has to know what my drives are, more my ritzonos are. Of course, a person has to be truthful with himself. He should have a rov to give him a dracha, but find where that is and go ahead and do what needs to be done. I remember my Rosh Hashiva in America, when they came out approximately some 30 years ago, at least 30 years ago, with two Sfarim. The two Sfarim did not make it. And you know what they were? At the same time, the same company. They came out with two Sfarim. You know what they were? One was Rav Dessler on Gemara al Shas, and the other was Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch al Shas. Two Sfarim they wanted to put al Shas. And he was very disturbed about these two Sfarim. And he was right. Because as I said, it didn't make it these Sfarim. He was very perturbed why they brought it out. He says, the only way we consider them Talmidei Chachamim is because they have to be writing Sfarim on Shas. Rav Dessler was the king of Machshava, the master of Musar, the person who didn't leave any stone unturned in Machshava. Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, the man of the Pirush of Chumash, that no end has ever been, every Pirush is based on his Pirushim. And that's it, that's their godless, that was their tikkun, that was their Gilgul, that was their kiyum, what they needed to be do. No, we have to make them also have writing in Sfarim and Shas, and now we consider them Talmidei Chachamim. No, a person has to know where he comes from. And I'll end with this, because the essence of a person is always, what do you always say? I want this, I'm interested in this, and my drive is this. When we speak about the ani, the zich, the individual, who I am, we're not talking about our physical body, because if chas v'shalom, a person loses a leg, loses an arm, it doesn't change his ani, it doesn't change the I, it doesn't change who you are. Obviously, it's something deeper. What's deeper? It's that ratzon, it's his want, it's his interests, it's his drive, it's his will. That is what is the description of what the ani is of a person. The zich of a person is described by those drives. That driving thing within your personal interest, where you want to get to. Now there's two drives, and with this we're finishing, but it's an important difference to know. There's the immediate spontaneous interest that a person has. Those are external. I have to eat, I have to sleep, or I have to look, I have to do something wrong, or not even something good also, but the immediate thing you do, get up, not getting up, staying lazy, speaking the Lashon Hara, not speaking the Lashon Hara, eating this, eating something good or bad or whatever it is, but these immediate type of spontaneous things is usually external. The real individual, to know where the real is, that part is the nefesh. But you want to get deeper than the nefesh, the external soul. You want to get to the neshama. The neshama is something that is very individual to the human. That is what makes us who we are. The neshama is a decision, it's a ratzon, it's a want that comes from when I think and make a decision. When I make it proper, educated, and weighing the sides and make that proper decision. That comes from within. I remember sitting by Rav Volby at the table. We went a few bachrim together. And everything you ask him, even he knew the answer to everything. He stopped for 2 seconds, never answered, boom, on the spot. Everything weighed at least 5 seconds, maybe 10, maybe 15. Everything he always weighed the sides, because he wanted always it to come from bifnim, from absolute, the deep recesses, the recesses within his neshama, not from his nefesh. Every animal has a nefesh. Everything has instincts. Every live specimen has some type of instinct that does automatically. But we want to go deeper to that. We want to make a decision. That's the neshama, and this is the Gilgulim. You want to make a tikkun in the Gulim? Get to the neshama, not the nefesh. Go ahead and look deep inside of you. Where's my drives? Where's my rotzon? What do I want to do that's maybe negative, and start conquering it? Because those are your tikkun, and it's a tremendous way of a push for us to be able to realize this is my I know it's hard. I know it's just how I am. I'm an angry person. And Mala said, no, that's what you're here for. That's a tachlit chaim. If not, you're not supposed to be here. Stop breathing. That's not what it's supposed to be. And also to the other direction, when I find myself of a certain interest in a davar tov and a set tov, go ahead and hold on to it, latch on to it, make yourself great in it. Try to get the best that you can be, and then you'll be able to achieve the true Gilgul and try to make the final tikkun so that Mashiach will come in Mirabi Amenu. Amen.